We've got another high-stakes SEC football game happening this Saturday at 2:30 in Kyle Field for Auburn, coming off of an emotional loss, coming off of a game that they honestly played well enough to win. That's very clear and well documented at this point. Sure, there were a couple of mistakes, but there were a couple of mistakes by the officials too that made that game what it was. And Auburn is in a place where they're in a must-win situation. If it's not this one, you got to do it versus Georgia. And if you put yourself in a must-win game versus Georgia, you are asking for pain. So this is a game that Auburn feels like they can and will get. For A&M, you're trying to prove yourself. You got it done versus Notre Dame. You got over this huge hump of winning a quality game on the road, something that hadn't been done in like 10 years for A&M, and you finally did it. But what's the next step? What's the follow-up to that? Because we've seen A&M win some big-ass games over the years, only to not finish those seasons strong, and that's as recently as last year. And the follow-up included a loss to Auburn on the road in an overtime thriller. Can A&M avoid that? Because you're only 3 weeks into the season. You have to follow up early and often if you're A&M, if you want to go where you think you can go in the 2025 season. So again, we're between a rock and a hard place. Two teams that have a lot on the line. A&M, homestand right now, but then a really tough month away from Kyle Field. Auburn has Georgia next, like we talked about. They have Missouri. They have Vandy on the road, which all of a sudden looks very tough. End the season with the Iron Bowl, of course. Tricky game at Arkansas. It's a really important game for both sides, and it's going to be a super, super fun one to watch and consume. Intriguing matchups all over the place. There's some comparisons between these two teams that we'll look at. And it's a game that I'm very much looking to see what we get from two teams that are in a place where they still feel like they can go out and win the SEC, or at least contend for the SEC and earn a playoff spot in a few weeks. So guys, thanks for being here. Like and subscribe. We're going to do our Auburn versus A&M preview and prediction video. I talked a lot about Auburn and A&M in the first video, so I figured we'd skip right to the prediction, give you matchups, give you players to watch, give you the stress points in the game, and at the end, I'll tell you who I have winning. And I'll give you a little spoiler here. We're hitting the over again. I think there are going to be a lot of points scored in this game. I think A&M's offense is really good. As good as Auburn's defense is, I think A&M's offense can go against anybody in the country. And I think Auburn has some really exciting stuff offensively, and A&M's defense is still not what we think it can be. And I don't think that gets fixed overnight. A lot of points in this game coming. But let's talk about Auburn. What do we learn about the team versus OU? We learned that this team has fight. We learned that this team can go on the road and be down and seemingly out and screwed by officials time and time again, only to come back and take a late game lead against maybe the best defense in the country. That was impressive, and it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows in the game. The grit that the team showed was admirable and is something that can carry that team places down the road in a season as long as they put themselves in better position to win earlier in games. And again, refs were there, refs happened. Auburn also made some mistakes in the game. They contained a Heisman-level quarterback. You know, Mateer didn't really have rhythm or get things going consistently until very, very late in the game where he strung together a couple of quality drives, just kind of nickel and diming his way down the field. I thought the Auburn defense was one of the unsung storylines coming out of this last weekend of football. I think this Auburn defense just has a lot of really solid pieces. It starts with Falk on the defensive line. He's a guy that has a great combination of size and speed, and what Auburn likes to do with him is just plug and play him, move him around that defensive line, try to use that combination of speed and quickness and size on the interior on passing downs, see if you can't get around some players. He's a guy you have to keep an eye on. That whole defensive line is stout. It's solid. Their interior guys are 320 apiece. They have some real bruisers in there. They have speed. I think they can pop pretty well from the safety position. Number 5 at safety is the guy that jarred the ball loose against Isaiah Satenia on that scoop and score that got called back. Big hitters out there. I think their corners are quality. But I think this is a defense in Auburn that is built from the trenches out, and that's what you want to be in the SEC, and they have that. Still a bit of a younger defense, but I think this is one of the better defenses that A&M will see in the 2025 season, and I think they've proven themselves to do that on the road. Offensively, I mean, Auburn is a consistent quarterback away from just being a menace on offense. They have every piece you could want. The offensive line is up and down, right? The offensive line can be had, but it also has its share of wins. I actually think that in a game where they gave up 10 sacks, that the offensive line performed well enough against probably the best front seven in football right now in OU. Quarterback just holding on to the ball and not willing to throw the ball where it needs to go at times. There were soft spots in zone coverage that were available to Jackson Arnold that he just wasn't willing to pull the trigger on. Obviously, he missed a couple of deep shots to Cam Coleman, who is a freak in the game, and A&M's had that issue as well. But Auburn left points on the board in that game with those deep shots. Probably 2 touchdowns on the board to Cam Coleman that didn't happen just because of overthrows or, maybe a false step by Cam Coleman on a go route. But that's stuff that's available to Auburn. That's stuff that, if they can improve on things from week 1 to week 2, can be there against A&M's defense. And as much as I like A&M's defense and the pieces it has, it's not playing to the level that OU's defense is, not by a long shot. So it's a very scary offensive attack from Auburn. Running backs are solid. Cobb, their lead back, he's kind of turned into their lead back, averaging over 7 yards a carry. Was largely bottled up versus OU, had only 6 carries or so in the game. But, as much as he was bottled up, he was still able to rail off an explosive 30-plus yarder late in the game, or maybe in the mid-portion of the game, where he just broke a bunch of tackles. He's kind of this, not the biggest back at 5'11", 200, but he's slippery and he can get through guys. He can get through arm tackles, and that's a guy A&M's going to have to get on the ground. But you obviously know about Cam Coleman, who's just the premier deep threat, I think, one of in the conference, if not one of the very best in the country. Singleton and Simmons are guys that can get you laterally, can take balls and can take short balls and catch and run. They're guys that they can get involved in RPOs. I think they're very willing to get Simmons involved on kind of like some quarterback zone reads, quarterback keeper stuff, present some lateral eye candy, which versus Baylor really fouled up that defense. One thing that A&M's have to really hone in on is everybody sticking to their assignments, because what Baylor was not good about was just people vacating that quarterback running lane, going all out for that guy in motion, going all out for that read, and just opening the C right in the middle. And Auburn's offensive line is good enough to move bodies, especially against Baylor. And Jackson Arnold ran all over the place. That's a challenge for A&M this game. But all that to say is that Auburn can beat you a lot of ways if they get plus play from a quarterback. They didn't necessarily get that consistently versus OU. But let's talk about A&M, then we'll kind of talk about what to expect in this game. A&M obviously is better than expected in the passing game in 2025. Going into the year for A&M, you thought it, I thought it, my mom thought it, your mom thought it. Everybody thought that A&M's identity was going to be pounding the rock. Power running game, a lot of gap scheme, a lot of pulling offensive linemen, a lot of Colin Klein classics. That has turned out to not so much be the case, because other teams knew that too. Just like my mom and your mom knew it, opposing defenses knew it too. Allocating an extra player to the box, getting a numbers advantage in the box, bringing a safety in. A&M has had the read of pass the whole season, and we anticipated that would last, or at least I did, for the first 3 games. Marcel Reed, this passing attack, was going to have to prove their ability passing through 3 games for teams to stop selling out for the run. I'm not entirely sure if that's going to change, because A&M's going to run a lot of 2 wide receiver, 2 tight end sets, and it's just going to invite them to stack the box. That's still going to be there. And A&M's going to have receivers on islands again, I believe, just based on the nature of their offense and how they go about their business. I think that's going to be there for A&M. Now, again, a quality defense from Auburn. It's going to be a very intriguing matchup to see how they handle both the threat of run and pass, because I think this A&M running attack is maybe slept on a little bit so far in the year, only a few weeks in, where we all thought it was going to be the strength of this team and one of the better running attacks in the conference or in the country. And it just hasn't been utilized to that extent. Of the 7 or so players that have gotten multiple carries for A&M this year, all but one of them are averaging over 5 yards a carry. The read just hasn't been there. The need to run the ball just hasn't been there, because the passing attack has been so effective. And we could talk about Marcel Reed's development. I mean, we know this, Aggies. It's been really, really encouraging and positive. He has proven to be a patient and willing pocket passer, because teams are containing him. Teams are not going to let him scramble. That is so well documented. I mean, Reed busting onto the scene versus LSU. Everyone knows the kid can run. So, we've seen teams not really pin back. We've seen teams maintain their leverage to attack either gaps, even on clear passing downs. And, Marcel Reed has sat in there, and his eyes have maybe been the best part of his whole game. Scanning defenses, manipulating safeties, finding soft spots in zone defense. He has been so good against zone defense this year, just finding the weaknesses, finding the soft spots, and credit to Craver and Concepcion for having a really good feel of where to sit into those soft spots, not trying to invite help from other zones, just kind of sitting appropriately where they're supposed to be. It's been a really, really good tandem. So I think the wrinkle, the next elevation for A&M's offense, and maybe we can see this versus Auburn, much like Jackson Arnold, we got to hone in the deep ball. We've had man coverage opportunities where A&M's uber talented receivers just leave guys in the dust, and Marcel Reed sees it and just flings the ball. Not enough air, too much of a line. It's getting past his own speedy receivers. And that has to be cleaned up. You left probably 150 yards on the board and a couple of touchdowns against Notre Dame. Could have very well scored in the 50s, just like Auburn could have very well scored in the 30s against OU last week. That's something that both quarterbacks are dealing with right now. But I do think Marcel is ahead of the curve compared to Jackson Arnold in just sitting back and making your quick decisions in attacking and diagnosing zone defense. I think that's very much there for Marcel in this attack. And, of course, A&M's receivers, as soon as they touch the ball, they are a lethal threat to do insane, breathtaking things. I mean, we saw that in the Mario Craver 86-yard catch-and-run touchdown versus Notre Dame. We've seen that from Casey Concepcion all season. Slants taken for 40-yard touchdowns. Bubble screens by Mario Craver taken for 30-yard touchdowns. That's what A&M is right now. And I think Marcel Reed just honing in that deep ball accuracy, and then the further utilization of this running attack as those reads present themselves, that's the next evolution of the A&M offense. And I think we might see some of that versus Auburn, because I think they are going to give a little bit of attention to these receivers now. A&M defensively, a little bit of a mess. A little bit of a mess. You've been prone to some explosive plays. You've been prone to some game-changing plays, especially against Notre Dame. Now, we'll be fair, A&M's also made some really, really big plays defensively. As much as some of those game-changing plays, whether it's a safety breaking outside contain, whether it's a defensive end getting too far upfield and being run by on third and long passing downs, and just the run play has been there for opponents against A&M all year. UTSA did it, clear passing down, run the ball. A&M's not ready for it. Notre Dame did it once on a scoring drive. A&M's made some mistakes. A&M's had guys out of position, but A&M has also made some game-changing plays defensively. We saw it in the entire second half versus UTSA, shut down defense. We saw it in multiple goal line stops against Notre Dame, short yard goal line stops. There was a stop at the goal line to force a field goal that was a big play from Cassius Howell, who's billed as this great edge rusher for A&M, but also has brought some really good run support stuff this year, which has been a great piece of his development. But you got to stop giving up the big ones. You got to stop letting guys get past you on zone coverage. You got to communicate better on those plays. And A&M will once again be without free safety Bryce Anderson. And with Bryce, we've had some complaints about his ability to support run and tackle an open field, but he has a really good field as that single high safety that A&M utilizes a lot. And this is a game with Cam Coleman on the other side. You're going to be running two strong safeties in this game again. It's going to be Dalton Brooks and Marcus Radcliffe. Those are two strong safeties, guys that are more comfortable in the box. And Brooks is going to be your free safety this game. And he's a quality player. He's a guy that draws the eyes of NFL scouts whenever they're around. He's a guy that we always talk about as some of the most potential in the world. But I don't know if he's playing where his future is right now. I think he's playing there by necessity. That's what you got to do. And I'm curious to see how that is handled against such a threatening receiving core in Auburn. And if Jackson Arnold can make them pay, that could be an opportunity for them. But for A&M, I would think that the game here would be keeping everything in front of you, right? Don't let Cam Coleman get past you. I think jamming him is a good strategy. I think bumping him is a really good strategy, because you have one of the best boundary corners we think in the league in Will Lee. And he has gotten beat a couple times this year, especially against Notre Dame, but he hasn't let things get past him. He's kept plays in front of him. If we can at least do that and keep Cam Coleman within 15 yards, I mean, a 15-yard explosive is better than a 60-yard game breaker. I think we're in decent shape. But I do expect Auburn to get some points in this game. A&M has to stop this running game. They at least have to slow it down. This threat of the quarterback run, these receivers running laterally as either eye candy or ball carriers, that is stuff that you could see really, really affecting A&M's defense if they keep making the mistakes they have before. Linebackers getting caught up in congestion. Defensive ends maybe attacking the interior a little bit too strong, not maintaining their leverage to stop the outside, to contain the edge. Auburn will stress that. But I think more so than anything, if you can limit explosives, you're in a decent spot. You're in a decent spot here. You just don't want to let these Cam Colemans run free. You don't want to let the Simmons, break out the outside. You don't want to let Singletary catch and run. But I think that about covers our matchups and our scouting report for both teams. I think there'll be a lot of points in this game. I think Auburn's defense is good enough to not let A&M's offense, have 50 points available to them like they did against Notre Dame. I think they can have some more success than Notre Dame did. I think Auburn might even be a better defense than Notre Dame's, if only marginally. Notre Dame just gave up 30 to Purdue. But, of course, A&M thoroughly waxed that defense in the game and could have been a lot better. But I also think that A&M's defense has some ground to gain, and I think they will gain it over the weeks. Whether that happens this week or not, I can't say for certain. I don't think it's magically fixed in a week. I think we'll see progression. I think we've seen run defense progression game on game for A&M over the course of the year to the point where they bottled up maybe the best 1-2 punch and O-line punch in the country with what Notre Dame had with that offensive line, Price and Love. Held them to under 140 yards. I mean, that's an admirable performance on the ground. If they can bring that again and even bring the next level of that to Auburn, I think A&M's in good shape. But if Jackson Arnold starts connecting on these and A&M doesn't get pressure on Arnold, because I don't think OU was necessarily in his face. I think they protected well enough for most of that game. If Arnold can just put it together and start hitting some guys, that's going to be scary for A&M if they're not minding their P's and Q's in coverage. But again, I expect Cam Coleman to beat any corner that's on him. But in terms of a three-corner tandem to throw against a good receiver core that Auburn will have, I really like A&M's corners. The problems have been with the safeties. The problems have been with zone coverage from the safety, sometimes with the nickel. Man-to-man, just matchup for matchup. I think it's as good as we could have asked against such a good receiver core, and I think that bodes well for A&M to at least limit that to not going crazy in a game. But all right, it's time for my score prediction, guys. I'm fairly confident in the prediction. I'm not confident in how this game feels. I think this is a game that is extremely nerve-wracking for us Aggies. I think this is a game that Auburn is definitely capable of coming out and winning. But I have A&M winning the game 38-28. I think this is a game that goes back and forth. I think this is a game where Auburn might have a lead at some point in the game, early, third quarter. But I think this is a game in the end where A&M's offense just outpaces Auburn's offense. Even with the defense that Auburn has, I don't see a defense on this schedule that's going to bottle up A&M's offense. I think it just has too much going for it, and I think they still get to 38 against a quality defense. And you hold them to 28, which maybe that's a feather in the cap. Maybe that's a step in the right direction. It's still 28 points. But I think A&M will start to see some steps taken defensively, maybe give up a couple fewer explosives in the game, because my take all year has been that A&M gets better week on week as they get more comfortable and integrated into the Mike Elko defense, a more hands-on approach from Elko. And I think coming off this bye week, it's a big factor. It's a big factor here. We're coming off of a bye week, and we've seen A&M come out of those things lackadaisical at times. There have been games where A&M starts slow coming out of byes. There have been games where A&M doesn't feel like they have a rhythm coming out of a bye week. I do trust Elko to get that right, but that is something we have to look out for, because Auburn just played a game with their pants on fire. They just played an insanely emotional, energetic, highly contested football game, and they're coming off of that fresh. And for Auburn, the intangibles for them, you can't let that OU game beat you twice. You can't let the heartbreak that those refs gave you beat you twice. You can't let 10 sacks get in your head if you're a quarterback, if you're Jackson Arnold. You can't just be another deer in the headlights. There's a world, and I'm worried about this for Auburn, where Jackson Arnold is seeing ghosts, where he is once again on the road, a very hostile environment. It feels just like how you felt last week. And of course, there's not that added element of him going back to where he was before. I mean, OU, that's obviously a big personal endeavor for Arnold, but just being under the lights again or in the afternoon again in a hostile environment with a defense with a pass rush that we think can possibly get after him. That's something we haven't mentioned yet. The A&M pass rush was largely neutralized against Notre Dame. That's a really good offensive line. I don't know if Auburn's is to the Notre Dame level, but it's a quality offensive line. They have shown some weakness blocking at the offensive tackle position. Can Cassius Howell make some money this game? We saw it versus lesser opposition, 3 sacks in a row in a game to end a drive by himself. Can he bring some solo stuff? Can Mike Elko draw up enough to confuse Jackson Arnold in a game where he was very confused against OU just by way of disguised coverages? And it's really amazing what OU was able to do, because not only do they have studs out there, they have studs doing exactly what a coach wants them to do. They're a well-coached group. You could see it. You could see OU understanding what Auburn was trying to accomplish on given plays when that kind of, motion receiver into the fake handoff quarterback counter or quarterback run that was working so well against against Baylor, that did not work against OU. And that could work against A&M. We'll have to see that. And I don't think A&M can achieve what OU does defensively and get that out of their defensive unit. But can they at least draw up some disguised pressure? Can they at least confuse an offensive line? Because that is something Elko is known to do. I don't know if we're going to have the secondary disguises that OU is able to accomplish, but you can't let that game beat you twice if you're Auburn. You got to flush the toilet. You got to get past the refs. You got to get past your mistakes. We also have to touch on special teams. A&M can have Auburn in special teams. Auburn has done nothing but make mistakes, and they have some talent out there in special teams. I think Simmons is their return guy. He had a big return that kind of iced the game versus Baylor, but you saw a lot of mistakes in that regard against OU. You saw some penalties on special teams. You saw him field a ball at like the 2-yard line. You saw a bad snap lead to a bad decision by a punter, getting ambitious, trying to run around an oncoming, defensive player and try to kick around him. Didn't work. A&M is really, really good in the return game, so there might be some money to be made there. But it's a good game. It's an intriguing game. I think this is a game where A&M stamps in some confidence. And again, it's competitive. It's back and forth. I don't think it's a game where we feel like A&M's on top of the world afterwards because Auburn's a good team. They're not going to let us feel that way. But if A&M's able to go out and win by a couple of touchdowns, I'll change my tune there. But again, this is a competitive game. Auburn has a chance to go out there and win on the road and save their season. But I'm picking A&M in this one. I'm picking Elko to get this team right after a bye week. And I'll see you guys on the other side. I'll actually see you guys on Thursday. We're going to go live on Thursday, give you guys a chance to call in, give me your takes on the game. Of course, give me your score prediction on the game. We have the Hall of Fame board up there. If you get the score prediction right, you'll be in the backdrop of all of my shows going forward. You can see it up there. And we'll just talk about the game. So I invite you guys to call in on Thursday, and then I'll see you after the game. I'll be at the game this weekend. I won't be going live right after. I'll be going live midday Sunday, and we'll talk about what we saw there. I'll get with you with a quick video after the game. But it's an opportunity to set yourself in the right direction for A&M in SEC play, and I think they're capable of doing it. I really like what we're getting offensively. I believe this defense will take strides, and I think that starts this Saturday. Until then, thanks for watching, guys. Like and sub. Gig 'em.